much. How's it for you?
Yeah, well, it's the same. How is a Saturday? Big plans for weekend?
So in the evening we're going to spend some time with friends, and in tomorrow probably we are going to a museum. One loan I think it's called, but it's not yet decided. And also I have a driving lesson tomorrow. So not big plans, but some plans. And how's it for you?
Yeah, I already started with football training actually.
Hmm.
That's yeah. So I already feel tired in the beginning of Saturday. That's I think best way to start your
Yeah,
weekend.
exactly. It's the best way to start the weekend. Yeah.
Yeah, but actually, best start is with a front-end system design interview.
Oh, that's true. That's for sure.
But thanks for joining. I think it's second or third time you joining us, and thanks for that. Thanks for your time. I think today our plans is to train a bit with a system design interview. We had previously, 3 to 4 attempts, but like we had more like it was not specifically front end system design interview, rather like maybe back end or just software engineering system design. So I'm wondering how it's gonna be today. I prepared a little myself for that.
Okay, that's good because I don't.
Yeah, but first a few questions maybe. What's your goals? Because I'm gonna be interviewing you, sort of. What's your goals for this interview, for this session, maybe?
To show my best, of course, but yeah, just to share the knowledge how it can be. Of course, I'm not like that experienced architect or that experienced system designer in interviewee. So I don't know for sure how it's the system design that will going to help you to pass the interview. But I did watch some videos about the system design. I try to do this myself like several times, so I have some at least some experience, no zero, not zero, zero, some, and I'm going to try to show like the things that can be covered during the system designs approaches, and just to share one of the way of doing it. I think that's my goal.
Cool, cool. And big companies, especially for starting from some position, it's sort of required step, right, during the interview process. Another question: which tool would you prefer to use for this system design session?
So my favorite is Excalibur.
Oh,
I
that's a perfect one. I wanted to propose that, but I didn't know if that's you using that.
Okay, yeah, I like this as well. During my day, like day work, when I try to show something visually, I use this one as well. I like the style, how it draws the diagrams, and it's pretty convenient how it does everything. Of course, it's not perfect, and there are some like annoying parts for me, but for quick prototyping or system design, that works fine.
That's absolutely perfect. I actually have even a link in an Excel draw for to draw something there. I don't know. Can you open it just for yourself right now? If
Uh,
that's working.
where did you share the link?
Yeah, was it in this UI, but that doesn't matter. I can also send it. Oops, sorry.
Yeah, that
That's
seems like the same link as the. Yeah,
yeah.
exactly. That's what I mean.
Okay, sorry for that.
No worries.
Okay. Yeah, it's I already saw with some issues with copying a link and then generating this link from this application. I think now it should be working fine. Okay, send.
Yeah. So let me try this.
Mm-hmm.
Ah. Oh, okay.
Makes sense.
Yeah, I see the screenshot of Google Maps.
Yeah. By the way, if you share your screen, would be I think great.
Absolutely.
A few more questions before we begin. I think it's a really quick one. So, what you prefer to design today? Is it a component or the whole system, the whole application? Because I saw also in preparation so that people doing different format in that sense.
So I think it will be the whole session. As much as time allows us.
And not the session, but the application. Sorry, maybe.
Yeah. So I will try to do exactly as on those videos, because it also like very depends on you. Like your questions, your inputs, etc. But I will be focusing like mostly, of course, on the front-end side, but it can be also that I will cover some parts of the mobile application if it will be needed. So one of the first step of like the system design is the gathering the requirements, and then I will ask from you how, like from the functional perspective, how you see this, like because just a screenshot is quite a vague requirement, because it can be like different functions that are not shown on the screenshots, but you would like to be implemented in the system design. And then there will be like technical requirements, and we can start from there. The only thing is that I need to share my screen, and for this I need to allow it in the preferences. And give me a second.
Yeah. Probably you will need to reach your Chrome session.
That could be very likely. Sorry for this. It's just this is quite a new laptop for a couple of months. And
what we also can do for that, we can also use the live collaboration session. It's gonna be almost the same, I think. We can try that. It's fine. I will just send you another link right now, and I will share a screen myself. Send in one, and the other one. Let's see if that would work. Yeah, I see you.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, I see your cursor as well. Wow, that's nice.
Yeah, it's super nice application, this XTechnology Draw. I like it myself. So you can start. We can start doing it. I think in total we don't have too much time. Maybe like around 45 minutes, and then I will pretend, like interviewing you. Usually keep silent and looking really grumpy, not answering any questions, and doing some annoying things, maybe annoying sounds during the interview.
Okay. Wow. Yeah, that works perfect. So the first thing I'm doing is to just enlarge the screenshot to have it 100%, and then so text will be visible. And the first thing I would like to do is to gather requirements. So we have two kind of types of requirements. That can be, the first is functional requirements, what needs to be implemented in the application from the functional perspective, and of course technical requirements. So maybe there is like limitations on the frameworks or libraries that we can use, or maybe some performance budget. So like in what times map should be rendered, or like some UI should be rendered, latency, etc. So, but we will start with the functional requirements, and I see here the Google Maps, the kind of home screen. So here we can see an input. For the text, we have menu, we have the voice input, and that is the first question. Do we need to cover a voice input for this system design?
I think it's up to you basically to choose what exactly we wanna try to cover in this session. I mean, because that's a so huge application that we definitely need to filter ourselves, limit somehow. And I would say, yeah, you can drive it, but to me, yeah, audio input is not required. If you ask me.
Okay, clear. Yeah, that's good. Okay, then I will focus on it later. Here we also can see the user, and this I will also skip for now. And then the most important part is obviously the location input. And this is just text input where you can write some place, and this will be shown on the map. Then this is also quite important for the map to have the actual map, obviously. So this is where the forest, and then it's going some preferences over the way how you can go to some direction. But for this, we also need to think about direction, because one thing is just point some location on the map, and another one is to build a route between 2 points. So then it should be a route finder, and then route preference. So yeah, I will start probably from this, because that's already quite a lot, especially location input, map, route founder, and the route preference. I can come to these requirements later on if it's needed, but for now that's a start. Oh, for the technical requirements. So
what are the technical requirements?
Sorry.
What are the technical requirements? What's the difference between functional?
Yeah, so from the functional perspective, we define the things that user experience with their input. From the perspective of they can interact with the interface, they have some functionality, and they just use it. So it's kind of UX, and from the technical requirements, they go through the technical parts, and for example, like the technologies that can be used, or the constraints that those technologies should follow. For example, like latency. Let's assume we have here we have really real-time application, which is like, this is not like really real-time, but a real-time edit can be in you can see an input from other people in once per second, and then we can use, for example, polling, or it should be immediate, like within 100 milliseconds, so it's felt instant. And then we should use some peer-to-peer technologies, or we should put the servers closer to the clients, for example, edge servers, etc., etc. So for this particular application, my first question, from the technical perspective, would be how fast probably the map, the route should be found. I don't think that's, I already kind of foresee in the future that the location finder will be not in the, should not be implemented on the client side. It will be on the backend side. But still, just to understand whether we have any limitations on the milliseconds that we should render our map within. For example, if I build the input like my address, for example, or Amsterdam, how fast it should be shown. Do we have anything for this?
I think for Google Maps application, we really want a perfect user experience, because it's gonna be used by billions of people in the end. I mean, for routing, I would expect a user can wait a bit, not too much, but can wait, because indeed, there is some calculation, and I think user expects this calculation to happen. But for showing the map, that should be as fast as possible.
Can be wait time a bit. Okay, so I would also assume when I open it, it should be shown even before finding, but just shown also instantly, because what would be the point of waiting for this? And then like route preference can be changed immediately, no problem with this. Right founder we covered. Map is there, showing and finding, and location input is finding and its input. For now, I think that would be enough as well. And yeah, it's always kind of, maybe it's not perfect, but it's iteratable process. And then, of course, we can come to the functional requirements, or we can come to the technical requirements, just to be sure that we cover, we have them written, and we cover them on a later stage if we realize that we need them. So then the approach will be kind of MVC. It's kind of very, very standard backend implementation, or like in the years, but it stands for the model view controller. For the model, we can explain how the model in the database would look like, and that would help us to define, for example, view or the components that are going to interact with this model. And the controller, by controller, I mean here the API requests, so interaction between our application, which is view, and the database, which is model. So I can just quickly draw it. So this is model dash database, and it's in the very, very end. Then this is our application, maps front end, which is view, and this is maps front end. And the controller, it will be the API requests. So like this, and like this, controller API requests. Right. So we can start with the model, because that's quite important for us, and define what we would have. So model for the map is a little bit unusual. So of course, the first thing we have is like locations, cities, etc., etc. So, and this is like points on the map, but we also need to store the map itself. And for the map itself, it's also kind of tricky to store it, because if we can see on the screenshot that's written there, so that shows like the airport, that shows like some water, some big cities, but it does not show small cities on this map. So it does not show buildings, it doesn't show some tiny details. And this is obvious because on the different scale, you don't like want always to see every possible street and water and building on the map. And this comes to the like really interesting point, that map can be implemented with some kind of tiles. So let's assume we have like a map, and this is, let's assume the zoom will be 1 pixel, or like 10 pixels is 100 meters. And another completely different thing is when 10 pixels is, let's say, 10,000 meters. So the tiles can be just like pieces of the map that have a different detailization on all of them. Sorry. One more also would like copy. For example, for this, each tile can be, let's say, 10 pixels. All right, each tile may be 10 pixels. Let's write. So one tile is 10 x 10 pixels. And for 100 meters, it will be like obviously 100 meters to 100 meters with some buildings and streets on it. And for 10,000 pixels or 10,000 meters, it will be entirely different situation. So then we would need to somehow store it in the database. When the database, for example, input or the search will show or will request the map with some particular detailization. Let's say it's 100 meters. We need to query all the tiles from the top left perspective, or from top left coordinate to the bottom right, let's say, and find all the tiles that belongs to this particular area on the map, and then show it. So then that slowly comes to the model, and then the database map, and then it would have. So there are two different, or I think I see for now two different options. So we can literally have different databases for those tiles. So we have, for example, a database tiles 10 to, or sorry, 100, and then, for example, tiles 1000 or tiles 10,000, etc., etc. And each database we can just store, for example, that would be for each tile the ID, which is a serial number, let's say. Then that would be coordinates of the tile. So it's top left corner and bottom right corner. So that would be top left and bottom right. And each coordinate is also longitude and latitude, I think, but I'm not 100% sure. So for me, that would be just easier to call them X and Y. So the X of Y of top right, and then X and Y of top left. Top left, and X and Y of bottom right, sorry. Then, okay, so would that be enough? No, we also need obviously to store the tile itself. So that would be some, I will call it simply a style. So that can be probably like an image. So ideally, to show it nicely on all different devices, that should be vector image. So maybe some SVG, maybe, but for now, like for the sake, just for the sake, yeah, SVG is fine. SVG is absolutely fine. Okay, so we have a tiles. We know where the tile belongs and where it ends.
Can we maybe pause a bit regarding the SVG? What are the alternatives you're thinking on, and why would you choose a SVG in the end?
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, so to scale it nicely, because the screen can have different density. Mobile phone can be really, or MacBook display can be really dense, where some regular screens like monitors that can be less dense. And then to show it nicely, we can have multiple options. We have really precise PNG or raster images, or just SVG or vector images. Vector images is essentially not per se each pixel defined with some color, like it's done for JPEG or PNG, but it's just math formals, or just paths defined in the file, and then the device itself throws this path kind of dynamically. And then, because it's just mathematical formula, it can be the detailization of it can be defined dynamically. So if device itself is very, very dense with pixels, and then it can decide, okay, I will draw up to 6 or 9 precision after the comma, or if it's really not dense device, then it can decide, okay, I will be just drawing first 3 or first 2 precisions after the comma, or digits after the comma. So that's the benefit of the vector format. And SVG, being a vector format, actually does this for us. So other options like regular raster images like PNG and JPG Sometimes, like for example, when an image cannot be converted to nice mathematical formulas, like when you take a picture, for example, it's just a bunch of pixels, then it can be easier to use those, better to use those like GPG format. For UI, when it's a gradient and a couple of other options or couple of other colors, not like millions of colors and not every pixel is colored. And also, if image has some transparency, then GPG does not support transparency, but PNG does. There are new modern formats like WebP or WebP is, I think, one of them. Is kind of GPG, improved GPG. That's actually a combination of GPG and PNG. I think it does support the transparency, and it like generally less size, just like smaller than GPG, but in terms of the colors and the functionality is the same. So that's why it's kind of nowadays prefer to use WebP.
Yeah.
And another small remark is that obviously it's not all browsers support like WebP, and there is a new tech, for example, picture, when you can actually specify different formats simultaneously. So if browser does support WebP, then it will render it. Otherwise, it will render like some GPG.
I had in mind the other thing you didn't mention. It's Canvas. Why would you not choose Canvas in this case?
Yeah, that was I was thinking as well. So the canvas, it would be essentially like redrawing the same on the map, like everything, and then we would need. So I honestly a little bit weaker in the canvas, so I would not be like confident to explaining how it works and what the benefits. Here the canvas is also an option, but in this situation we would need to draw each and every object on the canvas ourselves. So let's assume we have first like just Earth, then like roads, buildings, water, bridges, some signs, and then we would need to store all the possible objects. Maybe there is like some nice data structures how to do this. And then we would serve all of them to the client, and we would need to draw all of them on the client. So to me, it seems like a little bit too much work, but I did not honestly, one more time, I did not honestly think too deep in this direction. So I just like imagined that it's possible to do with the canvas, but I would not do this with the canvas.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you.
Let's
go on.
Thank you. And so like alternatives here, okay, we can have multiple databases or actually tables with the like tiles 100, tiles 1000, tiles 10,000, and they will have exactly the same structure. We can also just call them tiles and have them all together. And here we can write scale, and it's 10, 100, or 10,000, etc., etc. So I don't think for now what would be like the best option, but the simpler option is to have a scale, because I know for sure that the database itself can index very good those rows. So I would go with just one table. Okay, so let's assume we have this. So we obviously in our map we have some objects. On the screenshot we have the zoo or the airport. So we need to have an locations, I would call them. And then it's also ID, and then it's also coordinate. And now it's interesting part, because technically I can attach the location to a coordinate, and then I can just query them through the coordinates exactly the same way as I do for the tiles. At the same time, I can do this with the tile. So if I know what tile will be shown on the screen, I can just query all the location based on the tiles if the location is attached to the tile. I would go with the coordinate because it's a little bit safer, because the tiles can be changed. For example, if we a little bit redraw the map, or we just move all the tiles right and left, then we will need to recalculate all the attachments for the locations. So that would not be the best idea, but the coordinates of the location will always be the same. So then I will be attaching it to the coordinate as well. I will call it a label of the location, which is a string. Maybe it's like a type, airport, restaurant, etc., etc. Just to simplify later on the search. For example, Google Maps, it's not visible on this screenshot, but sometimes allows to show restaurants close by, bars close by, etc., etc. So then that would be helpful to use a type for this. Okay, so then location input would be implemented where the controller, map is there, route funder, route preference. Okay, so for the route funder, we have two different, wow. So for the route funder, I will just write it to think a little bit about it later, because obviously, and this is the drawback of the having this based on tiles, is that let's assume that would be just imagination and it's a canvas, and we need to draw everything ourselves, and we have their streets and buildings, etc., etc. But we still we still need to have those streets and buildings and everything else, because we want to build a location finder. And obviously, if you want to find the location between two different points, if it's down the street, you need to know that there is a street there. There is a path, like a straight path between two buildings, etc., etc. So do I want to paint put it in the locations? I'm not sure about this, because the locations is points on the street. So I would rename it to points better. And then I would need to have something else. And that would be from the top of my mind, something like objects, another ID here, and then object can have, object can be, for example, a building or a street or a bridge, so, or a path of the metro. So wow, that was essentially object is just a list of points. And yeah, probably I would, for the sake of simplicity right now, do this is the list of points. And then that would be, each point is just coordinate. And then this is a type, and this has a label. So can be street or bridge or building or metro route or etc., etc. And the label is just a string. And the question is that, would it be working for the search between two different objects? For search, if it's a coordinate, we will need to find what this coordinate belongs to, because it can be building, but at the same time it can be some part of the string. And then from this, we can start building the road. So I think it will be exceptionally complex in terms of building, and there are high chances, very high chances, that I just don't know the way how to build it properly, but that would work. So we will start for now on the working part. Okay, so then let me think what we need to do next. Next we can, it's already a lot of time, but then controller, this is a database, the view. So for the view, I will have map, and then a component for the, let me define, so a little bit writer from the model, there will be view, and it also will have a map. Then it will have a point. So map component would get a list of tiles, and it just will show the list of tiles. Point will be just like absolutely positioned map or point on the map. And it's also, we can have a list of points that we want to display and that come from the some API request. And then we have also, except a list of points, we have, I think, so UI elements, and then preferences, search input. So that would be an app itself. And then our app will have an input, then a map. So now I define. Oh, thank you, Alex. I'm writing the components tree for just the sake of simplicity. So up, when the input search is clicked, up, for example, does the request, then it passes to the map list of tiles. Map renders this list of tiles. Then map also gets the list of points. Then it needs to pass this to the map points. So I think it would be nice to create a tile component. So then it here will be a tile, and this is a list of them, and then it would be a point, and this will be a list of them. So the list of tiles, the list of points, absolutely positioned, and then some search options, whether like the preference is by car, by food, or by public transport, or by your own. So that would be the options, and this is at least good for now. So then what we have interactions between the model and the view, and I will write them as controller a little bit down or below the view. So that would be when search input is clicked, we do post something like search, for example, and the input for this is we need to know the scale of the map. So and the scale can be just rounded to the closest 0. So if it's like 8, then it will be rounded. Or on the server, I think it's ideally to round it on the server. So just a scale. Then this is a number. Then another param is coordinate of the map. So again, top left and bottom right. Okay, so search options. So, and for the search options, we have some, whether it's the car or the public transport, etc. Transport. So here is just an array. And I think so for public transport, that can be, for example, bus or tram. And for the car, it can be the type car or public transport, etc. So okay, we sent everything and the number. We got back the list of tiles, we render them. We got back the list of objects, we render them. If we zoom out, we send another request, for example, get a list of new tiles, render them, and get a list of new objects, render them. So that should be enough for the search. And then, so this is params, and response, or this is, let's say, a request. And the response would be always list of tiles, or just tiles, list of tiles, and then the points, list of points. Alrighty, so this is for search, for some just search on the map. Now the more interesting part, route. Again, we can do post to route, and now in the search, or sorry, in the request, it would also have two different. In the request, it has a scale, but then it has the start and the start coordinate, and then it has the finish coordinate, top left and bottom right. And the response is more interesting, and this is what I missed in the option, in the model itself as well, is that in the response we have a root. And then the root is just some drawings on the map that would go through the tiles. And this is also an interesting drawback of the tiles. And now I'm starting actually questioning whether that's a good idea or not. Because if you want to show the path from one destination to another, from one point to another, then you want to see basically the route on the map. And if it's a tile, then you would need either dynamically highlight on each tile that goes through this road the path, or if it would be the canvas, then you can just dynamically draw on the canvas blue line. So that could be more efficient from this perspective. So we still, for the sake of not changing everything in the last moment, we'll proceed with the tiles. And then to draw the route on the map, we also would use some absolutely positions elements on the top. So then here we would need to have routes for route, and this is just a list of coordinate. And do we have it like this for the object? Yes, the list of the coordinate. And then in our components, that can be optional param, coord or route. And the route is the list of points, route. So if there is a route, we will draw somehow on our map the list of the points. So the points data types. Point would be essentially for us is just a coordinate. And coordinate is X and Y and top left and just a coordinate. It's X and Y. So I think we can also define the scale, but the point can also depend on the scale. So, but I'm not going to put the scale inside the point data type itself. It would be dynamically calculated from the scale of the map. Should we start from get rendered data? Yes, that's a good point. So in the very, very beginning, even not when the search input is clicked, but when the search in and when the map is opened. So for when the map is opened, we still have coordinate of the top left and bottom right. We still have the search options, but okay, so that would be a little bit separate, because when the map is opened, that's like this. But when search input is clicked, we also need to provide is an input coordinates not of the map, which is opened right now, but also address or the input from the search. So that would be also a completely different story how to implement the after suggest, and I will write it in the search requirements, I think, for functional requirements, location input. So location auto suggest. Yeah. So yeah, for the location after suggest, that's kind of tricky because you would need to search through all the possible objects in the world, which is quite a few, I would say. There are a lot of them, and so we need to use as much as possible the information to cut the tree of our search. So, and then we would use again the currently opened location of the user, and we will start from this location. So then we would need in each search after complete. So I will add it as the second point when the search is executed, when the location search is executed. So the endpoint will be location. Again, we have a scale. Again, we have a coordinate. And again, we have a search input. And we also have an input here, which is a string. And on the backend side, we can use this scale and coordinate and the search options as the first option, or like first rank search. Then if we don't find anything in the current location, we fall back to the just location wider, for example, in the country or in the in the city, then in the country, and even then, if we don't find anything on this scale, we will fall back to the all objects in the world, and then this search will be the longest, and then it will be quite a challenging point to execute on the backend, but that should be working, I think. All right, there are quite a lot of things, and that is, I think, just to make it working, that would be not perfect by far, and maybe later on it will be considered to move to the canvas. But that it's a start to just have it working. Then obviously there are kind of, after we defined our interactions, we come to the optimizations part. So optimizations part, yeah, does it fit the front-end design, system design interview? Not exactly only front-end, but front-end is part of it. So then comes the front-end optimizations, and then I will write it here, just optimizations. Okay, so for optimizations, we have like technical requirements and find and show in instant. And for this, we can use we can download the map to the clients. So when the first time client opened the map, we can just save those tiles somewhere on the client's machine. It can be, yeah, local storage is basically too much for this, or too little, but there are IndexedDB, for example, database that can be used, or it can be just cached somewhere closer to the customer. So tiles can be cached on the different levels. The device itself, then, for example, CDN, or maybe, yeah, the device or CDN. So the trick for it is there is quite modern or quite popular thing. It's called stale while revalidate. This is the approach how to basically show the data as fast as possible. So basically, always in the very beginning, you show the data, whatever you have in the cache, but simultaneously, you always send the request to actually check with the server whether your cache is still valid. For example, maybe there are some new objects or some tiles updated, some buildings were removed, some buildings were added. So then we still show the map. It would be not perfect, like with some errors, but then that would be at least instant. Of course, that does not come with the first option when we show the map in the very first time, but then we would need to actually ideally use the device location if it's possible. It's not always possible. We can ask a user during the installation of the application, or when the first time the application is open, for the location and permissions for the location. If the customer grants them, and then we can start downloading the map even before we showed it, even before the registration process is completed. So that would help us to find and show the route instant. And for routing, yes, because that's a search.
Can I stop you for a second? About the cache, I have a question. Like, what are the capabilities? How much cache can we store, and what will it allow us to do? If you look at the user experience, I mean, probably these maps are, when they're cached, they take in a lot of size, I would assume.
Yeah, so for the local storage, well, I did not mention the local storage. Local storage has only 5 megabytes of data, and probably that's also depends on the browser, but 5 megabytes max. And usually, for example, when I downloaded the map from the Google Maps, I remember it was around, that depends on the detalization, but usually that's around 60 megabytes. It can be more, it can be 100 for big cities, it can be less, but let's say it's like 100 megabytes, it's the safe amount. So technically, browser can allow you to store like 100 megabytes cache for the website, but it's still, for example, 100 megabytes is 100 megabytes. It's a lot of data. And then ideally, we should also ask customer to beforehand whether they want to store all this information. But if we already showed the map, then we already downloaded this. And we can store it as an IndexedDB, but also I think it's so this kind of fetch cache or service worker cache thingy. I unfortunately don't know its limitations, but I think that would be possible to store all the map there.
Okay. Cool. Just a reminder that we don't have that much time left. So if
that would be the second optimization. So the second optimization is obviously just the UI optimization, and for this we need to take into account how we write our CSS, JS. So like traditional approach is to bundle it, but nowadays it's there are like better techniques and bundle like everything in one file. Now it comes like smart bundling, where it's like 100 or 1,000 of files. But it can also be that nowadays with the import maps or the common standard, it's better not to bundle or even have smaller chunks, more than thousands or like hundreds of files. For CSS, we can use the CSS in JS, but it's also this technique is getting outdated because it's a lot of performance overhead. And for this, we can use just like functional CSS. Functional CSS also allows to not have problems with the classes and styles, because always if you want to apply the same style, it will be always the same class. It's small, and also it can be the also like advantage is that you can analyze so-called critical path. Yeah, that's the last one. critical path, and critical path is whatever is shown before the scroll. So it's in the first visible view, it should be less than 15 kilobytes gzip. And so the CSS and JavaScript should be optimized to this, or like HTML for this sake, that's shown in the very first time, and then this will be showed as fast as possible. I did not cover accessibility for this. Did not cover, but like really just shortly, if that's the semantic tags, then it would be already good from the accessibility perspective, good enough. If there are some parts are missing, there's always ARIA tags, ARIA label for the problems with hearing. And for the also with the problems for visibility, that should be all the information can be duplicated verbally, like how to like or the route or the search where something is located. And then the two input is the first element. It can be by default like focused, and then it would be easier for user to start typing their destination.
Right.
And I think that is it.
Perfect. Perfect timing. Thanks, Pavlik. Did we cover what we wanted during this interview?
Oh, that's a good question. We covered a lot. I did not cover like so interactions with the server, so how they can be implemented. Like maybe it's not just regular HTTPS. Maybe we want like WebSocket somewhere here, or some other parts, server-side events. But I don't see really application of them. We really spent a lot of time. I really spent a lot of time on the model itself. And that would be questionable indeed, because it's like your question was absolutely valid, because it's not that much on the front end side, it's more on the like the overall system. We covered interactions with an API, so that would be also kind of front-end / backend. Usually it kind of backend teams, in some organizations, that just backend teams come to you and tell what things you need to call and how. In other teams, in other organizations, that can be that you define it together. So I could definitely spend more time on thinking about tile versus canvas approach. Probably now I'm thinking that canvas is better for like, because we also have this search through the map, but I really like need to deeply think about this, because it's still like for the canvas, it's a list of points, so like list of objects, and then either they're stored on the backend and used just for search, and then we show the tiles on the client side, or we actually need to keep all the objects on the client side or like in the cache to be able to show them. And also it's not only showing, it's also drawing all these objects on the map. So obviously if you have if you have a screen which is how it's like big, for mobile here it's like 360 or 400 dash 800, so that would be 40 dash 80 tiles, and so 40 multiplied by 80, that's 3,000 to 3,200 DOM nodes with the tiles. So that's like quite manageable, even though this is quite a lot. But if it's objects and you want to show, would it be only 3,000 objects, or it will be way more objects that are not needs to be shown? So that's a question that we need to actually investigate for this. But thank you very much, Alex, for this interview. That was really fun for me to do this.
Thanks. Thanks, Pavlik, as well. I got some comments to feedback, basically. If you interested, Maybe we also could cut a little bit of requirements, like to focus on some specific features instead of doing it all. But again, when you're talking about just system design with a normal software, it's one thing. With a front end, I assume when you see a screen, you want to implement all of it, which makes sense. Yeah. And then what would you expect from me as an interviewer in this case? Was it something missing? Was it something that you wanted more? Or
the things that I really liked is the questions that helped just to define everything, and you're like really wrote them on the screen. That was like also very nice because you just like I could see them. Perhaps more input on what you exactly want to hear, because it's also like you can steer a little bit the conversation, even though in the system design the interviewee is leading the conversation. That can be a little bit directed. Okay, that's we don't want to go too deep in the detail in this section, or we want to hear more about the components tree. Like, so you can completely skip these points of interactions. Just imagine that you have all the interactions, for example, for API as you want them to be, and you don't want to define them, and stuff like this. So then it would be easier for interviewee to understand what things to cover more.
Indeed. That's what I thought. A few more thoughts. First of all, was really nice how you directed this interview. I mean, you had a lot of thoughts. Maybe we could in the next iteration somewhere, like like a more directed, so not scattered. This between all of this was really nice. Line of thoughts regarding the indeed SVG images versus Canvas, when you came to a conclusion that maybe indeed Canvas would help there, but it's actually very natural to begin with some approach, right, and then come to something else. And the thing that I'm really wondering, asking maybe why I didn't see in other interviews any mention on technologies. Is that a thing, or during the system design it's not necessary?
That's a good question. So I think it's not like a hard requirement, because technically there can be critical technologies and not critical. So if we are talking about the front-end framework, it's not critical actually. So it can be like for this particular implementation different, any front-end frameworks. What is critical is that some libraries or some technologies need to fulfill the technical requirements. And obviously for this, it's better to focus, for example, on network interactions, or on like CSS, or on how JavaScript is bundled. So those type of things that can be critical for the project, because if you don't bundle them at all, that can be less nice and do not fulfill the technical requirements. But generally speaking, that also kind of sometimes depends on the organization. And then like if you just understand the general idea, then technologies can be applied to this general idea. That would be good enough, I think.
Cool. That was it from my side too. Thanks a lot, Pavlik, for your time. It was a very useful session, at least for me. I hope we can continue at some point and let's say make an episode 2.
Yeah, it's a good idea. Thank you for inviting. It was a pleasure for being here.
Yeah, have a great weekend, and have a nice coding.
Yes, thank you very much, Alex. You too. Bye. Bye.
Bye.